light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. I always try to put my best foot forward in these television shows, and on one hand I don't want to rely on pop psychology to say look on the bright side or always find something good, and I don't want to put something trite and simple and easy over the top of it because it trivializes the struggle that's going on. I want to be honest, I don't want to lie, and yet I don't want to have more faith in my defeat than I have in being able to overcome whatever challenges come at me. At the present time, my circumstances are very limited, and yet I feel a calling, if you will, because of the synchronicities that happen and the ways that I've been able to touch people's lives as Sister Who that are completely beyond my control. I had no idea of how to be in the right place at the right time to make a difference in someone's life, and yet the feedback, the responses that I get tell me that I have been able to make a profound difference in a lot of people's lives. The challenge with all of that is that my own life has been subject to innumerable injustices and attacks and being marginalized and all sorts of horrendous things that limit my ability to create as many shows or as good of shows as I would like. When I first started doing this television show, it was in a studio that was probably 10 times the size of the one in which this one's being recorded. And I had a crew of 6 or 7 people, and 3 cameras and all kinds of equipment. It was wonderful. None of that is available to me anymore. And if I were to wait for it to be available, the shows wouldn't get made. And then it got down to where, okay, I'm downsizing, and for a number of years it was a question of finding just one person to be a volunteer camera operator. Well, I've been unable to find that as well now too. And yet still I get requests from literally around the world asking for more television shows and telling me what a difference that this ministry has made in their lives. And so I feel a sense of duty to keep going, but it requires a bit of ingenuity each time to figure out, okay, so how do I keep going with even less than I had before? It kind of reminds me of the story that I heard allegedly about Isaac Perlman being in which if I understand correctly, he's a professional violinist with a physical disability, and he was in a concert playing on his violin, and one of the strings broke, and the audience gasped, and after a pause, he started playing on all 3 strings, on the remaining 3 strings. And a moment later, a second string broke, and everyone gasped and wondered if the concert was over, and he started playing again on only 2 strings, and a few moments later, a 3rd string broke, and the audience was just horrified at the challenge this professional violinist was now facing. And to his credit, he began playing the rest of the piece using only the one remaining string and finished the piece, and of course there was a standing ovation. Everybody was so impressed, and once they finished applauding, he quieted them. He said, sometimes, speaking as a person with a physical disability, he was saying to them, sometimes it's not doing the best you can with what you have, but doing the best you can with what you have left. And so I guess in, imitation, not exactly imitation, but in a similar sort of dynamic, I guess, as Sister Who, that when people are asking me to record shows and I'm saying, but I don't have the resources I once had, and something says you have to record shows anyway. The audience is there, the performance is here, say something, say anything. Let love and wisdom flow through you even when you don't realize it's happening. And so I find myself in challenging circumstances. I find myself wrestling with poverty on almost a daily basis. I'm hoping that by going through a doctoral program and finishing an academic degree, that I will finally be able to be valuable enough, I guess, to the world around me to be paid a living wage for something. But there are so many jobs at the present time that don't pay a living wage, and consequently so many people who are struggling and trying to survive. And how do we get up each morning and still believe in our own lives enough to go through the struggle and to stand together and do what we can and see if maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will be a little bit better? That no matter how many negative adversarial things are heaped on us, no matter how much the government doesn't care and the neighbor doesn't care and the town doesn't care and the roof is leaking and the bank doesn't care and everything that can possibly go wrong, that in the midst of all that to say, but I care. And I believe that there is some spirit of goodness left in the universe that also cares. And I believe there is some goodness in some other people. But that because there are so many of us and we're scattered over such enormous distances all around the planet, or all across the country even, just to focus on a slightly smaller area, we're not talking to each other enough to know what the need is or where the need is. But there's a lot of us who know that when we work together, incredible things happen. And so I try to be positive for all of you. I don't want to lie about any of my circumstances, so I guess most of the time I don't mention them. But I don't have a family. I don't have employment. I worked myself out of a number of jobs by being too smart and finishing the job too quickly and too efficiently, and then there was nothing for them to pay me to do. And I would have thought, well, wouldn't you want to find some excuse to keep me around if I'm this good? But they decided no, they didn't want to keep me around because of what I'd been able to solve. They had nothing for me to do, so I could go. And so I'm surviving as best as I can, but my resources are limited, my support is limited. I don't have a family, I don't have a spouse, I don't have generous sums of money. I don't have a substantial income. I have creative contributions and insights and a way of seeing the details and figuring out how to make things work that has been beneficial to a lot of people at different times. And ways of seeing what life could mean, or a different way of looking at life that is more empowering, that has been helpful to lots of people over the 28 years of being Sister Who. And I'm honored. It gives my life meaning, so that even if nothing happened from this point on, I know that my life has been worth it because I know that I made a difference. But if there's not going to be any more ministry, any more ways of empowering other people, if it's not going to get better, then what's the point? The point is that as Sister Who, I continue to do these TV shows for as long as there's a working video camera anywhere within reach, so that I can encourage things to get better, and so that I can say to the person who is asking what's left to live for, that there's you and there's me, and the two of us together can begin to make the world a better place, even though nobody around us may be all that particularly interested in helping. That we can find each other, and then we can begin to find another person and another person, and we can begin to set a better example. And even if there isn't anyone else, that down to the last minute that we're given, we can continue to show the world a better way to be, showing them what kind of people we are, instead of reflecting back what kind of people they are. when, well, I don't know which of my stories I've told and which I haven't at this point. Suffice to say that at the time this video is being made, I'm living in very oppressive circumstances, but I am trying very hard to show the world what kind of person I am, rather than to be the reflection of those oppressive circumstances. It's not about what I'm experiencing. It's not about how limited things may be. It's not about my motorcycle. Somebody tampered with my motorcycle and did $1,400 worth of damage. But for the moment, I need to get my motorcycle running again, because that's the most affordable transportation I have. And I need to keep the video camera running, and I need to keep the computer running, because without these resources, I won't be able to continue to do this work. And trying not to let any of that discourage me, that the bad things happen because I live in a world that is filled with brokenness, and brokenness will always try to reproduce itself. The only thing that stops it from reproducing is when people stand together in love. And in that sense, I just hope that there are enough people who would stand together with me in love to address all of these. But if there aren't, I still have to go on being who I am and not be a reflection of the problems that happen in my life. On a good note, and again, this is kind of date stamping it, but just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that have been going on in my life. My service dog had a small growth forming next to his right eye. Well, it was a bit expensive, but that was surgery to have that removed. The good news is that it was determined not to be cancerous. So in that sense, it was something that could have been really horrible that turned out not to be. But the only way we were able to find that or discover that was by undergoing some very expensive surgery. And because the veterinarian lived far away from where I live, I had to add to that expense staying in a motel, because there was no one who would let me and my service dog sleep on their couch for a night. Which going through all those things and coming up with the more ingenious ways of working around them, it always seems a little bit absurd to me then when people think that I have to be pampered, or that we need to move this stuff. Well, you should hire a moving company. You should, that's not budgeted, but considering that I've been a bodybuilder 5 times in addition to being a 21st century nun, most pieces of furniture I can find a way to move all by myself if I have to. And where are you going to sleep? Well, if I have to, I can sleep in my car. I've done that enough times too. And if you have to make a new set piece, well, $1.50 worth of yarn from the thrift store and a few boards from the dumpster that somebody threw away, and I can make a set piece. I have lots of ingenuity that I can bring to deal with these problems, and because of that, I'm able to take the least amount of resources and do more with them than most people believe is possible. Which is why it always seems peculiar to me when they think that a problem has to be solved in this super expensive way. And I say, no, it doesn't. There are really, really cheap ways to solve this problem if you're willing to do the work. And I am absolutely willing to do the work. There was one time when I was living in a mobile home on its own property at 10,000 feet, and there was this big gully behind the house, behind the mobile home, that was part of the property, but it was unusable because of the way it was washed out. Well, when they did construction on a house about a block away and needed somewhere to go with all the dirt they were excavating, I said, bring it over here. I'm only a quarter mile away, maybe 100 yards even, and you can just dump it here and I will deal with it. And they were very glad for not having the expense of having to haul it miles and miles away. So I had, in one particular summer, there were 10 semi-truck loads. So the big long, I guess they call it a belly dumper. It's a big long trailer behind a semi-truck that has doors on the bottom, I guess, that open up, but it's a very, very long semi-truck trailer meant for hauling dirt. And they dumped 10 of those behind the mobile home. And I spent 3 months of my summer, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, with a wheelbarrow and a shovel, because I didn't have anything else available, moving that much dirt into this area and putting rocks around the edge to create a natural, or to create a retaining wall with natural materials. So I used found rocks and rocks that I dug up out of the ground and wherever, and moved them all to the edge and made a retaining wall and kept shoveling the dirt in behind them until I had basically doubled the size of the lot. And I did that all with a wheelbarrow and a shovel, because there was nothing else available. And I had the time, I had those two tools, and there was the dirt, so I did it. But after going through things like that, when people then look at me as if I'm some sort of fragile thing that can't do hard work, I kind of wonder, and almost I have to try to keep from laughing, and suggest to them that if you had followed me around for the last 10, 15, 20 years of my life, you would realize how ridiculous what you're saying is. For everything I've already been through, it doesn't make sense to be worrying about a little hard work to fix something up. I mean, I basically rebuilt about 3 houses at this point. The problem is I wasn't allowed to keep them because of dangerous people in the neighborhood, or because of banking institutions that would not allow me to refinance, because after all, you're a student and that's not a real job, so we can't refinance this. And when I didn't have a way of paying a horrendously predatory mortgage, then I lost the house. And I talked to everyone I could think of, and nobody was willing to do anything except stand back and say, oh, this is so terrible. Okay, so it's terrible. I knew that. If you're not going to do anything, move out of the way so that I can do what I need to do. And I made the best decisions I could. I tried to put, I figured out how much I could transport with me and everything else. I tried to be sure I gave it to people who would appreciate it. You know, essentially finding a good home for all these resources, so that I was being a good steward, so that it wouldn't be that I abandoned them, but that in a sense of good stewardship, I am not able to take this with me. You can use it here. Please take it. And that's how I downsized, I guess you could say, to where, but it was, for me, it was an experience of tremendous loss, tremendous loss. There are so many things that I could cope with when I had my house that I can't cope with now because I don't have the tools. And so the set has gotten smaller, and the show has become more limited in the way it's done. Thank goodness I still have the video camera, so we can still do these shows. And I persist, and I persevere, and I hope and pray and trust that somewhere in the future things really are going to get better. I have to keep believing that. But during the dark times of the present, I have to believe that those good times are coming, so that I'm still here when they get here. I have a significant movie collection that on VHS tape, actually, because a lot of it's never been updated. But I still have a VHS player, which to some people might sound like I'm living in the Stone Age. Everything is DVDs or digital format now, and who even has a VHS? Well, I do, but when I first started this show, the first shows were recorded on 3/4-inch tape. I don't know if anybody knows what 3/4-inch tape is anymore, unless you've been in the business a very, very long time. And then we went from 3/4-inch tape to SVHS and High 8, and finally up to digital tape, and now everything has gone digital and DVDs and things like that. But when I watch some of my favorite movies again and again later on, after seeing them the first time, I mean, some of these movies I've watched 6 or 7 or a dozen times. One of them is a movie called The Boy Who Could Fly. And there's a particular point about half to two-thirds of the way through, where everything has gone wrong, and it is so horrible, and so much injustice, and so much, it's just everything, absolutely everything is wrong. And the last time I was watching the movie again, I had to hang on to the chair I was sitting in very tightly and not push the pause button or push the stop button, because I knew that they had to get through those horrible, horrible dark times in order to be there when everything went right at the end. It's as I don't remember the name of the movie, but there was another movie that kept coming back to the saying, "Don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens." And so I have to trust and hope and believe that the miracle is somewhere right around the corner, because I need to be there when it does happen, and I need to trust that it really will happen, and I can't give up before it does happen. And as much as I may intellectually look at a situation and say, what's the point? As Sister Who, I look at that and say, what's the point? If I can't find one, I will make a point. If I can't find a new beginning, I will make a new beginning. To be that stubborn and that determined and that refusing to give up, that if I can't find a method, I will create a method. I am smart enough and I am hardworking enough that I can do this. And I may have to do the totally unexpected, ridiculous, whatever. I mean, it's kind of like in the movie Milk, where Harvey Milk was talking with a young man in Minnesota, I think is the way it's depicted in the movie. And he said he was gay, his parents weren't accepting, he was ready to commit suicide, and Harvey Milk within the movie told him, just get on a bus and go, or just go, even if you have to walk, just go anywhere, to any major city, and there will be gay and lesbian people there who will help you. Just go anywhere. And you don't find out till later that he actually took Harvey's advice. He got on a bus, he went to Los Angeles, he made new friends, he started a new life, and everything became better. And that's not to say that everyone should run for the nearest big city. That was his solution. It may not be yours or anybody else's. But the point being that in those times where you think there is no alternative and there is no other option, there may be some drastic different choice that under normal circumstances nobody would choose, that is right there in front of you and totally doable. You know, well, I don't have the money for a bus ticket, I don't have the money for a plane ticket, do you have a bicycle? If you don't have a bicycle, can you walk? If you can't, figuring out roller skates, skateboards, hitchhiking, if something needs to be moved from point A to point B, there are all sorts of inventive, ingenious ways that one can employ that one may have never considered before because one was never in this situation before. Or there may be some place where you can develop a new friend who has the resources available to him or her. Or you might find someone, do you need someone to sweep out the dining car on a train that's headed west? Do you, any kind of barter? There's all sorts of possibilities. But it's very much about not giving up no matter how terrible it is, and deciding that there is no solution, there is no acceptable response except to keep going. When I was watching the movie Wonder Woman, the one that was made in 2015, I believe, and as Wonder Woman is depicted in that movie, that every time she's fighting with total commitment every single time, as if it is impossible for her to fail. And if anything were to claim her life, it would claim her life in mid-stride while she was doing what she believed in doing, It would not claim her life lying down or giving up or giving in or being afraid. It would only come against her while she was absolutely fighting to win. And I kept thinking, that's really the attitude we need to have, that going into something, not being afraid of falling off the edge of the cliff or when she's running down the peak of a roof of a house, not being afraid of slipping and falling, just totally fixed on the goal, totally going that direction, no matter what happens. If I fall and die, oh well, but with my last ounce of strength, I am going to be pursuing the goal that I want to see happen. I don't know at what point someone is going to appreciate the work that Sister Who has done. I just know that because I am Sister Who, I don't have any other choice except to keep doing it with whatever is within reach. It's been a hell of a fight, and it's not over. And if I have anything to say about it, there will be a happy ending. But the happy ending may depend upon somebody else taking action too. In any case, whatever your struggles, please don't give up. If there's anything I can do to help, please contact me. Thank you very much for watching.